Edgies, thanks for watching the replay. This is so random, but I felt like I really wanted to share something with you as I was reading in bed, and I haven't even scoped all day, and I did not plan on going on camera, but I found a really awesome little story to share with you. Hey, Arlen. So, I know that there's not a lot of people possibly up at this time. It's probably like almost 2 o'clock, I think, over here. I'm going to sleep soon, but I was working on finishing up this book. Have any of you heard of this book, Oola? There's actually a lot of Oola people on Periscope, if you haven't heard of it. The writers of this book are actually scopers, and it's one of the people that I heard about Periscope from. So you could take a screenshot if you're interested in this book, and pretty much it says on the front like what the book's about. 7 areas you need to find, balance, and grow to live the life of your dreams. Have you heard of Oola, Arlen? I'm like literally in bed. I can't turn the camera. Why is it not turning? Okay. A little bit? Okay. Well, I heard about it because, hey, cosmic being. I can't remember. Hold on. Whenever I see faces, then I remember who I'm looking at, but for some reason, hey, Junior. Don't know much about it. Okay, so, I heard about Oola because Oola teamed up with Young Living Essential Oils, and they even have essential oils for their 7, pillars of, ideas and concepts. So that's how I heard about them, and when I did hear about them, my friend who got me into essential oils, her mom had bought the book and was reading it, and this is actually her mom's book. She let me borrow it. And it's so far I'm on page 80. I'm a really, really slow reader. Out of, it has over 200 pages. And so far it's it's okay. It's pretty good information, but I think that with how deep I am in my yoga journey right now, it's kind of seeming a little I want to say the word rudimentary, but I don't even really know what that means. But I feel like that's the right word, so we're going to go with that. I think you know what I mean. So, but needless to say, if you're watching this right now, then I wanted to read a quick excerpt from this Oola book for you. And if you're on the replay, then I just try to share with you, any random things that I feel like are really good stories or tips as I come across them. And this one really stuck out, and I was like, I have to share this on Periscope for some reason. Okay, on page 80, it was talking about one of the 7 F's. So there's 7 F words in Oola, which need to be in balance for your life to be really effing awesome. And this one that I'm on is faith, and that one's really kind of crazy for me, and I'll get into it later as to why. But this is a really cool story that's in this section that kind of, oh, it is cold actually, but I probably have you at a really not so great place. Okay, this might not freeze as much. Okay, let's try here. Here's a cool story. If you're ever kind of contemplating any type of faith of any sort, and that's something that I do a lot during this yoga journey that I'm on. So here's the story. It goes a little something like this. A university professor asked this question: did God create everything that exists? Many students replied, yes, God did create everything that exists. The next question the professor asked was, if God created everything, then you are saying that God created evil since evil exists. And according to the principle that our work defines who we are, then God is evil. The auditorium was silent. Eventually, a student raised his hand and said, "Professor, I want to ask you a question. Does cold exist?" Type in the comments, "Does cold exist?" I want to know your answer. The professor replied, "What kind of question is this? Of course cold exists." Guess what the young man replied? "In fact, sir, cold does not exist. According to the laws of physics, what we perceive as cold is actually the absence of heat. All matter becomes inert and incapable of reaction at that temperature." Absolute zero, negative 460 degrees Fahrenheit is the total absence of heat. All matter becomes inert. Okay. Cold does not exist. We have created this word to describe how we feel if we do not have enough heat. The student asked another question. "Professor, does darkness exist?" Does darkness exist? Type in the comments. The professor responded, "Yes, of course it does." The student replied, "You are wrong again, sir. Darkness, in reality, is the absence of light." If you're an art person, you also would know this. Light, we can study, but darkness, we cannot. We can measure light, but we cannot measure darkness. How can you know how dark a certain space is? You measure the amount of light present. Darkness is a term used by man to describe what happens when there is no light present. So, Professor, I ask you, does evil exist? Now uncertain, the professor responded, "You can measure heat, though. You do measure heat. You don't measure cold. So does evil exist?" Now uncertain, the professor responded, "Of course evil exists. I see it every day. Murders, wars, crimes, and simply man's inhumanity to man proves that evil exists. These manifestations are nothing but evil." The student interrupted, "Evil does not exist, sir. Evil is simply the absence of God. It is just like the darkness and the cold, simply a word that man has created to describe the absence of God. God does not create evil. Evil is not like faith or love that do exist, just as does light and heat. Evil is the result of what happens when man does not have faith that God's love is present in his heart. It's like the cold that shows up in the absence of heat and the darkness that shows up in the absence of light." The story ends with the professor being stumped and bewildered, and the claim is that the student was Albert Einstein. So, I thought that was really a cool analogy. I really learned through storytelling way more than other stuff, and I really liked where that went. So, it's saying that 0 people are in here, so I think that my Periscope is freezing. Sorry, it's been force closing on me a lot, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear the story at least. And the reason why I shared it with you is because it was like too perfect of timing for everything that story hit upon based on things that I was like learning about today. For example, this morning when I was watching at Gretcha Stretch's Periscope, she was sharing a like yogic chanting session that was in English, translated from Sanskrit or something. If you can't measure the opposite, how can one exist without the other? So, like, Arlen, what it's saying is like you can only measure an absence of something by measuring like what was there instead. It's kind of like how dark holes and stuff, sorry, like black holes, how they work, you know? You only know like a black hole exists because they measure like, or they observe the light that's like around it and being like pulled in. I don't know if that made any sense based on your question. But like scientifically, which is how a lot of people think nowadays, things scientifically are measured based on like usually one thing versus another. I'm wondering if I like aim this way, if my signal will get a little bit better. You just might not be able to see me. The lighting is like totally gone if you go this way. But that's how things are measured scientifically. So that's why it makes sense to me, and I hope that's like making sense. And I think I know what you're saying too, Arlen, like, because in the end, like, all of it is really just one, right? Like, that's kind of what we're getting at. However, right now, with how hard it is for us to understand some of these, like, really grandiose concepts, I think this kind of helps detach that, what am I trying to say? It helps to make a little bit of sense as to why certain things exist. If that makes sense. That's what I'm trying to say. A cup is only useful not by the shape, but by the shape that is in the void. Yeah, I like that. Yes, and so that's what I'm trying to say, Arlen. It's like, because our minds are like so engulfed in like these things, I like how you're trying to say, like, it's kind of like, if we focus on what the opposite is, then it helps, like, make things start to tinker a little bit better in our brains. And that's what that story did for me. I'm pretty much not even really trying to, like, push the whole last part, as much as, like, flipping ideas and trying to see them in a different, perspective, because they can sometimes like become at peace. Not to say that one thing exists or does not exist, but more to like say, well, we were only looking at evil in that, you know, situation as one direction, and now they're trying to flip it the other way and say like the opposite. And the reason I brought it up is because, yeah, so I was listening to Gretchen's chant Periscope today, and it was like beautiful words and stuff. However, like, it was talking about like God, like, I don't know, making us do like good, or like being in charge of everything that we do. And so I am not like a religious person at all. And I had a hard time, like, listening to it, and so I had to ask at the end if the type of yoga that the chant had come from was, like, related to a certain type of belief, and so she was explaining that in her scope, but it was a little bit tough for me to listen to. Sorry. It was a little bit hard for me to listen to because, like, this concept of like a god, like pretty much being like a little puppeteer to me, was like being on this chant, and I was like, I don't know how I feel like about this chant. And so the way that she explained it, you should totally watch her replay if you haven't. It kind of helped make sense to me, like, why the chant was still useful, and the words of it were really beautiful. However, I more associate with, like, energy and, like, this kind of, like, ever-evolving, like, thing that's just going, this cosmic universe thing that's just always changing. But I don't usually think of, like, a being or, like, a thing that's, like, controlling it, like, pressing buttons and saying, okay, this thing go and do this, and this thing go and do that. So that was why it was difficult for me, is what we see that shapes our values is what we perceive. Yeah, well, that's definitely true. And so that was already on my mind today. And then I did a meditation with Soulstar Medicine. So you should totally listen to her awesome meditations tonight. And while we were doing this accepting change meditation, she like had us imagining like places after being like swirled around and like in this crazy vortex. And normally I'm really creative and I can visualize a lot of new stuff. But when she was like, and now you arrive in like a place that you've never seen before. And in my mind, I was supposedly like going to see this new place, and it was going to help me understand what was going on in my mind right now. And I couldn't think of anything. Like nothing happened. Like it was just black, and it was darkness. Come about when we have an open mind. Yes. Well. It's not that it's like darkness doesn't exist. It's that darkness is just a word. Light is really like the thing that we're talking about when we're talking about darkness. Does that make sense? So it's just like a word connected to something that's actually relating to light. But if you were to say like, if you took away the word and like the object of light, darkness wouldn't exist. So darkness wouldn't exist without light. It wouldn't be vice versa. Light doesn't exist without darkness. You can have all light, but you can't have all darkness unless light somehow existed. Gosh, this is hard to talk about. I don't know how scientists do it all day. But so in that Soulstar Medicine meditation, I like was brought to this place and I couldn't think of any place except for darkness. Oh, okay. Awesome, Marlon. So we're on the same wave now. One can't exist without the other. Yes, exactly. And how do any of you like sit here on a day-to-day basis like I do and like be like, why is there so much suffering? Like, why is there evil? Why are there dying babies? Like, because I am a total like empath and I feel the pain of like everyone. So it's really, I cannot watch the news. I refuse. I cannot read the newspaper. I can't even really go on Facebook anymore, especially because everyone that's on my Facebook is like politics crazy right now. So like, it's really hard sometimes. Man gets in his own way and blames the world. Yeah. And so this helped me kind of become at ease and just be like, okay, without one would not be the other. And I don't know if there ever would be a world that would have no suffering, no pain, no like what we would call bad stuff. It's more, yeah, I really just put stuff into Facebook to brighten up the world, and I don't really take anything from Facebook. So I don't know if there ever would be a place where there would be no suffering whatsoever. It's just how we perceive it would need to change. And so that little story helped me. It helped me a lot. And especially like it was too ironic that I had to face like a learning experience with faith today with that whole chanting. and with darkness in that meditation with Rachel. And so I was like, that's so crazy that this is the chapter I was reading tonight. Yes. And I watched that movie. Actually, I watched both of those Zeitgeist movies. I don't know if you have Netflix. They're on there right now. And you can watch them on YouTube or like on their website. They're all over the place. And wait, I think it was that. No, shoot. It wasn't that one. There was some other movie that I watched. I learned too much. Like, my head is expanding at an ever rapid rate. There was some video that actually was on Nathaniel Solis's YouTube. I don't even know what it was called, and he has so many videos, so I'm really sorry that I won't even be able to tell you what it was, but it was really long. I watched the whole thing, and one really awesome thing that I got out of it, it was like a group that made like a message type of movie, and it was on his channel. One really awesome thing that I got out of it was that even though we may be at a place in our mind and our path where we don't want suffering and we want to like accept happiness and like the light into our world, it doesn't mean that we should be taking away that suffering and that darkness from everyone else, because we needed that lesson to get to where we were, and if we were to just take it away, we could potentially be taking away these valuable lessons to others who need to go through the same shit. Who knows how long it's gonna take? Like, there could be a lot of bad crap that happens to this world before everyone gets through that school book. But if we were to just think, well, I'm just going to take it all away so that nobody has to deal with it anymore, really it doesn't work like that, because I don't have a good analogy for this, but like they need that. They actually need the pain and suffering and all of this like chaos going on right now, because they're needing to learn, and unfortunately we seem to be extremely retarded as humans, and we only learn until, like, we burn ourselves. You know what I mean? God, how can I make the world a better place when it is such dark and dreary place? I didn't understand what that meant. Maybe you're still typing. I think I know what you're getting at, and it seems like it's the same concept, Arlen. I'm gonna keep talking, but I'm reading. But that message in that movie also was really powerful, and so I've been getting to that point in my life where I'm realizing that there's things that I don't need in my life anymore, so I can walk away from them, and I can stop creating like the problems and the suffering in like my little bubble. What can I do? I am only one person. God is infinite wisdom. Just be a better you. Yeah, exactly. Just don't take anything personally. Just like be you. Like stop trying to like force everybody else. Yes, I agree. And that's hard, especially for me, because I like to, like, force feed people stuff, and there's some very close people, like, oh, gosh, I mean, actually be above the world standard. Yeah, I like that. It's kind of sad to me, because, I feel very alone other than whenever I'm on Periscope through this like journey, and I'm starting to find these people at my yoga studio kind of are on the journey that I am, so it's helping me feel like less alone. But in my like immediate circle, like my family, my immediate family,
my best friend's family and my best friend and my friends and my clients, they're all like light years behind me on this realization. And I feel, like I said, I just absorb people's feelings and emotions and sadness, and like it's like I'm a little sponge. So sometimes, isn't that interesting how you attract that which you think? And Periscope is cool. Yes, yes. I do think it's really cool. Well, I feel a lot of times for them, and I know how much they're suffering, and I just want to like tell them like, do this. Like, okay, I read this book and like so much weight dropped off my shoulders, and then I did this practice and it really made me less depressed. And then I did this and I let go of my addictions. And then I did this and my body was better. And then I did this and I'm just like constantly giving tips. And even on here, like I'm giving it here, but I understand that like you have the option to take it or leave it. Whereas with my family, I want to be like, no, you have to go to like therapy, you have to do it. Words don't teach, only through example we teach. Thrive, and they will ask you how you're thriving. Yes, and like seriously, and Junior, is it Junior? Because I just want to make sure I am calling you your right name. Yes, that is by far the biggest lesson I have learned yet. Because my entire life, I have been trying to like preach to them and like find ways, find ways, or you can tell me whatever you want to be called, as long as it's like not super weird and vulgar, then I will call it. Speak so loud, what you say I can't hear. Wait, I think that you're saying that's like a phrase, but I hope that I'm not actually speaking so loud that it's busting my microphone, because seriously, my mom said that I talk so loud on Periscope that they can hear like me from the house. So I hope that's not, I don't think I was being super loud. I know. Yes. And yes, I do ponder that. And I find myself stopping now. In the past like 3 days, I have noticed me like preaching to my boyfriend's mom. I was like telling her like how I was getting through all these like personal struggles, and I know that she and I suffer like similarly with things. And so I'm like, no, you gotta do this and you gotta do that, you gotta do this. And then I just ended up stopping, and I was like, she's not going to listen to any of this crap. Like, she is literally only going to do it if she wants to. And by me just telling her what I'm doing and how I'm getting better, that will be the only way she'll even like attempt to like think about doing what I'm doing. And it is working. There are more open minds coming near me with my family. As a whisper, yes. My mom is the hardest one for me because there's a lot going on with her. And she's definitely like the hardest one for me to let go of. I don't like to see her stumble through a lot of the things that I've already gotten past, because, you know, she's my mom. So it's like she should like have already figured this shit out, right? Some don't like to take advice when they didn't ask for the advice. I agree. I am pretty good at waiting until like they're talking to me. Like they don't necessarily ask me. Yes. I have had to stop like choking certain people that are important in my life if they literally ask me to like just talk about something else, you know, and I respect that. If we are in a conversation and it's being brought up and then they bring up their issue, I do take that as an invitation to give an example, but learn how to ask how questions assimilate person's thoughts. Yes, I do that also. And so I'm like terrible on it on Periscope, but that's probably because it's just me talking on this video and not like a face-to-face conversation. But a while back, I did learn how much more useful that is in face to face. There's nothing more annoying than a person giving you your advice and you're not ready to receive it. Yeah. The crazy thing is, though, I accept advice almost always. It's very rare I don't, so it is hard for me to relate to that. Do you have questions with yourself? I do. All my entire life I have. And I feel like that's why I feel like I'm just always evolving. I never feel like I'm stuck. There's been very few things I've felt that I'm stuck on, and honestly it's just because I don't let myself accept anything. I'm always accepting new information. I'm always open to people like challenging my thoughts, I'm like totally fine with it. Like, Arlen, there's been a lot of things you have said that at first my first reaction was like, oh shit. And I felt like at first kind of like, oh man, like I don't know if I should be like even on Periscope anymore. I feel like I'm like not even deserving to be talking to these people because you are more aware. It's so easy for you to take it. But those who are asleep, it's hard to eat. Yes. And luckily I take it in, and then I really like take everything to heart. You saw I didn't even go to Costa Rica because of a really good point that a few of you made to me. That was really hard to do, but I don't let myself like get stopped. And so with all of my family members, yeah, I definitely have. I've started just focusing on only me and telling them about me. It's hard for me to do that because if you do know my situation, like, you know that I have issues with my mother because she only talks about herself, and like I have a very strained relationship with her. And so I noticed that when I am telling people about how I'm doing and like things that are changing and like trying to show and lead by example, I do notice that I stop a lot, and I'm like, I'm not trying to talk your ear off, like just let me know if you don't want to hear about it. And eventually that will go away, but right now it's a big concern of mine because I have lived with it being in a shadow. Yeah, I try to do that more. However, none of them will like be in yoga class and stuff with me, so they kind of like ask me what I've been doing, so that's why I'm like actually like verbalizing it. But like if it's something that I don't need to talk about, then yes, I actually stop telling them, and if it's something that they would be able to notice, I don't point it out. I just let them figure it out for themselves. But if it's something that they would never see and they're just kind of asking me how things are going with me, because luckily, even though I care so much about all of my friends and family and like extended family and wanting to help them, and they're not really willing to accept any help right now, they do care a lot about me and they do want to like give me help. So I think it's good because essentially by them thinking that they're helping me and like asking me about how things are going, I think that will be the way that I help them. And it's just weird because it doesn't seem like the normal way to learn. It's kind of like how every parent that I've ever met, they tell me like how much their child taught them way more than like other people would teach them. And I feel like that child right now. I feel like that little kid that's stumbling and falling on my face and doing all these like crazy things. And I can see the people that are, I imagine them kind of like more above me, like only because of like natural age. And I can see them like learning from it. Ask how until I get a nonverbal positive response. That's good. I like that. If I ever have kids, I think that we'll be good because that's how I live my life, and so actually kids get along with me very well, and I think it's because that's how I talk to them. I will try. It's hard. It's really hard because I know that my mom is about to like hit some walls. She's like on a collision course with some real uncomfortable situations, and so as much as I know to like ask those questions, when I ask them and all I get is I don't know. Like that would be like the extent of what I would get. And then she would talk about other situations like and I can see it again, and I'm thinking, well, she's not getting it. It's really difficult not to be like, please go like talk to somebody professionally that would be able to help you, because I can tell you all you want or all that I can say, but I know that you're like not even listening. Everyone is living in their experience in their own way. Yeah. And that's, it's taken me time. I'm better at it than I ever have been, and it will just take time to get over that like addiction almost to like wanting to help people and like pushing it on them. It's something that I definitely was obsessed with doing, and I'm doing it less and less. And so I appreciate all of you like encouraging me to continue that way of like doing it the right way. It's called peeling an onion. Go to